David Williams had been working at Riverside Shopping Center in Sacramento for 8 months when his true identity was finally revealed in the most dramatic way possible. At 62 years old, this quiet security guard carried credentials that would have solved the facility's crisis response challenges from day one, if anyone had bothered to ask about his background. The transformation from invisible employee to recognized expert happened during one critical Saturday afternoon that changed everything for David, his colleagues, and a veteran in desperate need of help. David's daily routine at the mall involved walking the same corridors, checking the same doors, and submitting the same incident reports. To mall manager Jennifer Chen and security supervisor Mike Torres, David represented exactly what they expected from an older security employee: reliable for basic tasks, but unsuitable for anything requiring real expertise. Chen had made the facility's position clear during their regular interactions. David, call professionals and stay out of the way, she had instructed when discussing emergency protocols. David was expected to observe situations, report problems, and defer all serious incidents to what she termed qualified professionals. Torres reinforced this institutional bias with explicit operational instructions. David was to maintain distance from any serious incidents and wait for trained response teams. When David had inquired about protocols for handling individuals experiencing psychological distress, Torres had been dismissive. "This isn't the old days. Leave real situations to us." The mall's official emergency response protocol reflected this systematic age discrimination. Personnel over 60 were instructed to focus on evacuation assistance while deferring all crisis intervention responsibilities to younger staff members. This pattern of exclusion represented a broader civilian tendency to dismiss military experience as irrelevant to contemporary challenges. David's actual background included extensive psychological emergency response training, tactical communication certification, and hands-on management of crisis situations in high-stress combat environments, but none of this experience was recognized or valued in his civilian employment. That Saturday afternoon began like any other busy weekend at the shopping center. David was conducting his routine patrol through the main concourse when his military-trained threat assessment capabilities identified a developing situation that civilian staff completely overlooked. Near the electronics store, a man in his 30s was exhibiting unmistakable signs of severe psychological distress. David's immediate professional evaluation identified multiple warning indicators: military-style clothing suggesting veteran status, hypervigilance scanning behavior consistent with combat-acquired threat awareness, rapid breathing patterns indicating escalating stress response. The individual was Marcus Rodriguez, a 3rd Infantry Division veteran with 3 combat deployments, who was struggling with untreated PTSD symptoms. As he muttered to himself, his distress became evident. Too many people, just like the marketplace in Ramadi. When environmental triggers reached a critical threshold, Marcus's response shifted to complete combat flashback. "Contact left, IED, everybody get down," he shouted, dropping into defensive position behind a decorative planter. David immediately recognized this as a veteran-specific emergency requiring specialized intervention. His radio communication to security control was precise: individual experiencing severe PTSD episode. Recommend careful response and crowd management. Torres's reply was predictable: stay back, wait for professionals. The mall's response to Marcus's psychological emergency illustrated why veteran-specific crises often escalate beyond control in civilian environments. Management's approach was based on generic emergency protocols that completely ignored the unique aspects of military psychological trauma. Torres and Chen's immediate reaction involved standard crowd control measures and law enforcement notification. Chen's call to 911 described the situation in terms that would trigger an inappropriate response. "We have a dangerous individual making threats about explosives." David attempted to explain the military context of the situation. "That description will trigger a tactical response," he warned. "This veteran needs different help." Chen's response was immediate and dismissive. "Step back. You're not qualified for this." Torres positioned himself between David and the crisis area, reinforcing the institutional dismissal. Direct order: "You don't have the training for this." This civilian response exemplified a critical gap in emergency management systems: the complete absence of military cultural competency in crisis intervention protocols. Marcus was experiencing combat flashback symptoms that required veteran-to-veteran communication, not civilian mental health methodologies. Faced with institutional orders to remain uninvolved while watching a fellow veteran deteriorate in psychological crisis, David made the decision that would reveal his true professional background. Despite potential job termination for insubordination, David violated direct orders and moved toward Marcus. David's approach demonstrated the fundamental difference between civilian psychological methods and military cultural crisis communication. His initial contact employed military protocol that immediately established cultural connection. "Marcus, this is Sergeant Williams. You're experiencing a flashback, brother. You're not in Iraq. You're home." Something in David's tone, the specific cadence of military communication, the command presence, cut through Marcus's trauma response in ways that civilian approaches could not achieve. "Sergeant, where's my unit?" Marcus responded, his voice shaking with confusion and fear. David's response utilized systematic grounding techniques specifically designed for military psychological crisis. "Your unit completed the mission, Marcus. Everyone made it home. You're in California, not downrange." The intervention continued with military occupational specialty verification to establish unit identity and deployment history acknowledgement to validate combat experience. David's systematic approach combined advanced psychological methodology with military cultural competency that civilian training programs simply could not replicate. When Dr. Sarah Martinez arrived and attempted to interrupt David's intervention using standard civilian psychological protocols, the situation reached a critical turning point. Her challenge was direct: "You need to step back. You're not qualified for this level of intervention." David's response would shock everyone present. Master Sergeant David Williams, 728th Military Police Battalion, Crisis Negotiation Specialist. Dr. Martinez examined David's military identification with growing amazement. Her professional assessment revealed the institutional failure they had all been part of. You're actually trained for this?" David's documentation included FBI Crisis Negotiation Course certification, advanced tactical communication training, military psychology specialist qualification, and crisis intervention team leadership credentials. These certifications represented qualifications that exceeded most civilian crisis response professionals. The effectiveness of David's military cultural approach became evident through Marcus's response. "Sergeant Williams understood what I was going through," Marcus explained to the assembled group. "The other doctors learn about PTSD from books. He learned it from living it." David's explanation of his systematic exclusion revealed the institutional bias that had prevented proper utilization of his expertise. "Every time I tried to help, you told me my experience was outdated." The aftermath of David's intervention triggered systematic changes in how civilian institutions evaluate and utilize veteran capabilities. County Crisis Intervention Supervisor Dr. Patricia Hendricks arrived to investigate and immediately recognized the significance of what had occurred. "You've had a master sergeant with FBI crisis training working as security?" she asked, reviewing David's credentials. Chen's admission revealed the institutional oversight. "We never asked about his background beyond basic employment requirements." The institutional irony was stark. A master sergeant with specialized crisis negotiation training had been working as a basic security guard because civilian employers never bothered to ask about military background. This represented a massive waste of specialized human resources and revealed critical gaps in civilian emergency response capabilities. Marcus's testimony supported the effectiveness of David's approach. "Sergeant Williams saved my life today. He helped me remember I'm not broken. I'm a soldier who needed help from another soldier." Dr. Hendricks's offer reflected the institutional recognition that had been missing. "Master Sergeant Williams, I'd like to offer you the position of Senior Veterans Crisis Specialist with our county mental health department." 3 months after the crisis intervention, David's transformation from invisible security guard to Senior Veterans Crisis Specialist represented a successful model for veteran reintegration and proper capability utilization. His new role individual with the county mental health department finally utilized his military experience in ways the private sector had consistently failed to recognize. Marcus Rodriguez's recovery process illustrated the effectiveness of veteran-to-veteran support networks. During one of his regular visits to David's office, Marcus reported his progress. "I'm peer counseling other veterans now, using what I learned watching you." David's response reflected his understanding of the continuing mission. "You're doing the real work, Marcus." The Williams Protocol for Veteran Crisis Intervention became a statewide model, combining advanced psychological techniques with military cultural understanding to address gaps in civilian emergency response systems. Dr. Martinez noted the broader impact. "Your approach is being adopted by crisis centers across the state. The institutional changes extended throughout multiple organizations, creating systematic improvements in how civilian institutions identify and utilize veteran expertise." Torres reported the practical results. "Our team has handled 4 veteran crises using your training." David's reflection on the experience emphasized the broader implications for veteran employment and institutional recognition. For 8 months, nobody asked the right questions. The most valuable person in an organization might be the one everyone stopped seeing. His final assessment captured the essence of military service that continues beyond uniform. "I didn't do this for recognition. I did it because the promise to never leave a soldier behind doesn't expire when you take off the uniform." The story demonstrated a fundamental principle about veteran contributions to civilian society. Military experience creates specialized capabilities that benefit communities in unexpected ways, but institutional recognition requires proper frameworks for evaluation, rather than assumptions based on age, appearance, or current employment status. Veterans like David Williams remain underutilized in civilian employment, not because their skills lack value, but because civilian institutions haven't developed the competency to recognize and properly integrate military expertise into their operational capabilities. If you enjoyed this story, click the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.